Imagine for a moment that we are in Paris in the middle of the 17th century. The air is thick with the scent of candle wax, old parchment, and the dampness typical of a city that has not yet discovered modern hygiene. In an austere room, a man of fragile health, barely a whisper of flesh over bone, frantically writes on loose scraps of paper. This man is Blaise Pascal, one of the most brilliant minds humanity has ever produced, a genius who at 12 years old had already rediscovered Euclidean geometry on his own and who at 19 invented the first mechanical calculator in history. But at this moment, Pascal is not interested in numbers or atmospheric pressure, subjects in which he is already a world authority. He is fighting a much deeper internal battle. He is trying to capture the essence of the human condition before death, which he feels breathing down his neck takes him away. What he left behind was not a finished book, but a chest full of disordered papers, tied with string, which we know today as the Pensées, or thoughts. This work is not a conventional philosophical treatise. It is a map of the abyss, the diary of an intellectual shipwreck survivor trying to find solid ground in the middle of the ocean of doubt and faith. To understand the magnitude of what Pascal attempted to do, we must place ourselves in his historical context. The 17th century was an era of total crisis. The old medieval world, where everything had a clear place and God was the undisputed center of the universe, was crumbling under the weight of the scientific revolution. Galileo had looked at the sky and discovered that we were not the center of the cosmos, and Descartes had proclaimed that reason was the only reliable tool for reaching the truth. Pascal found himself right in the middle of this whirlwind. He was a man of science who loved logic, but he was also a mystic who felt that reason alone was insufficient to explain the pain, the boredom, and the glory of being human. His life changed radically in what he called the Night of Fire, a moment of religious epiphany so intense that he sewed a parchment with the account of that experience into his coat to keep it always close to his heart. From that moment on, his goal was to write an apology, that is, a reasoned defense of Christianity aimed at the libertines and skeptics of his time. However, what he achieved was something far more universal, an anatomical dissection of human psychology that remains as relevant today as it was nearly 400 years ago. The central conflict of the Pensées lies in a fundamental paradox that Pascal calls the greatness and wretchedness of man. This is the backbone of his entire narrative and philosophical analysis. Pascal presents the human being as a creature suspended between two infinities, the infinity of cosmic greatness and the infinity of microscopic nothingness. On one hand, we are capable of understanding the universe, measuring the stars, and thinking about eternity. That makes us great. We are, according to his famous metaphor, a thinking reed. A reed is the weakest element in nature. A simple breeze can break it, but it is a thinking reed. If the entire universe were to unite to crush us, we would still be nobler than that which kills us because we know that we die while the universe knows nothing of its victory. But here enters the other side of the coin, our wretchedness. We are finite beings, full of contradictions, dominated by ridiculous passions, and inevitably destined for death. We spend most of our lives running away from this reality. This escape is what Pascal identifies with the French term divertissement, which we might translate as diversion or distraction, but which in his work takes on a much darker and deeper meaning. For Pascal, distraction is not simply an innocent pastime, it is a desperate defense mechanism. He states that all of man's unhappiness stems from one single thing, not knowing how to remain at rest in a room. Think about it for a moment. Why do we constantly seek out noise, trivial conversations, excessive work, or even gambling? We do it because if we stay alone with ourselves in absolute silence, we are forced to face our own emptiness. We realize that we are incomplete beings, that we are going to die, and that we have no answers to the most important questions. Distraction is the veil we pull across so as not to look into the abyss. Pascal analyzes how kings, despite having everything, need to be surrounded by people who entertain them, because a king alone is a man who remembers his own mortality. This observation is terrifyingly modern. If Pascal saw today how we use our smartphones to fill every second of silence from the moment we wake up until we close our eyes, it would more than confirm his theory. The infinite scroll of social media is the ultimate divertissement, a way of avoiding the encounter with our own soul. But Pascal's deconstruction does not stop at the surface of our social behaviors. He delves into the psychology of will and desire. He explains that as human beings, we do not actually seek the things we think we are seeking. We do not want the hare when we go hunting. We want the agitation of the hunt that prevents us from thinking about our condition. We do not want the money from gambling, but the risk and the activity that keeps us occupied. This is a very raw vision of human motivation. It suggests that we are trapped in an existential hamster wheel, where the goal is not to get anywhere, but simply to keep moving so as not to feel the weight of the void. Pascal uses his storytelling skills here to paint scenes of daily life that resonate with universal truth. He shows us serious magistrates who lose their dignity over a trifle and philosophers who boast of their wisdom but are disturbed by the buzzing of a fly. His point is clear: human reason is fragile and is constantly at the mercy of the imagination and the senses. This leads us to another crucial aspect of his work, the critique of pure reason. Pascal does not despise reason. After all, he was a mathematician, but he recognizes its limits. He introduces the concept of the heart as a faculty of knowledge distinct from the intellect. His most famous phrase, "the heart has its reasons that reason knows nothing of," is often misinterpreted as romantic sentimentality, but it is something much more technical. For Pascal, the heart is the faculty that perceives first principles, the fundamental truths that cannot be proven by logic. We cannot prove that space has 3 dimensions or that numbers are infinite through purely logical reasoning from scratch. We simply feel it, we intuit it. Faith, for Pascal, falls into this category. It is not something reached at the end of a syllogism, but something experienced. This distinction is vital to understanding his approach to religion. He does not try to convince the skeptic with abstract metaphysical proofs of God's existence, because he knows that those proofs rarely change anyone's life. Instead, he tries to show the human being their own sickness, their own disproportion, so that they then feel the need for a cure. At this point in his deconstruction, Pascal introduces one of the most debated and fascinating arguments in the history of thought, the wager. Imagine that the existence of God is a game of chance where you have to bet your life. If you bet that God exists and you win everything, an infinite and eternal happiness. If you lose nothing substantial, only a finite life that was going to end anyway. Conversely, if you bet that God does not exist and it turns out he does, you lose everything. Pascal uses probability theory, a branch of mathematics he helped found, to argue that the most rational thing to do is to live as if God exists. It is important to note that Pascal does not say this is a proof of God, but a strategy for someone who is already convinced that reason cannot decide the matter. It is a nudge toward religious practice. He suggests that if you cannot believe, act as if you did. Use holy water, attend mass, follow the rituals. With time, he says, habit will dampen your intellectual resistance and your heart will open. This idea that external action can shape internal belief is a very advanced psychological concept that today we would call habituation, or even a form of behavioral therapy. However, to fully understand this, we must look toward the darkness that permeates the Pensées. Pascal is not an optimist. His worldview is influenced by Jansenism, a current of Catholicism that emphasized human depravity and the absolute need for divine grace. He sees humanity as a mass of fallen beings who have lost their true nature and now wander the world like dethroned princes. This image of the dethroned prince is powerful. If we did not know we were destined for something greater, we would not feel so miserable in our limitations. A tree does not feel miserable because it cannot speak, but a man feels miserable because he is not eternal. Our unhappiness is, for Pascal, indirect proof of our lost greatness. It is nostalgia for a home we no longer remember but can still sense. This deconstruction of the human psyche also extends to the structure of society and justice. Pascal is a radical political skeptic. He asserts that laws and customs are not based on a natural or divine justice that we can understand, but on force and historical arbitrariness. People obey laws because they believe they are just, but the reality is that laws are maintained because they are laws and because there is power behind them. If people understood the fragility of society's foundations, everything would collapse. Pascal tells us that justice without force is impotent and force without justice is tyrannical. Since we have not been able to make what is just strong, we have made what is strong just. This cynical yet realistic view places him near thinkers like Machiavelli or Hobbes, but with a different nuance. Pascal believes this social disorder is another manifestation of our fall. We live in a world of shadows and appearances where true justice is inaccessible to us. To delve even deeper into his analysis, we must explore his vision of time and the ego. Pascal observes that we almost never inhabit the present. We are always remembering the past with nostalgia or regret, or projecting ourselves into the future with hope or anxiety. The present hurts us, and if it is pleasant, we regret seeing it slip away. Thus, we never truly live, but rather we expect to live. This inability to inhabit the here and now is another form of distraction. Regarding the ego, Pascal is relentless. He says the I is hateful because it is unjust, as it places itself at the center of everything, and it is annoying to others because it tries to enslave them. His analysis of self-love is devastating. We only love others for their borrowed qualities, their beauty, their intelligence, or their status, but not for their essence itself, because we do not even know what that essence is. This analytical depth inevitably leads us to consider the current relevance of the Pensées in the 21st century. Although Pascal wrote from a fervent Christian perspective, his observations on human nature transcend religion. In the era of artificial intelligence, neuroscience, and transhumanism, the question of what it means to be human is more urgent than ever. Pascal would remind us that no matter how much we increase our technological capabilities, we are still that thinking reed, fragile in the face of sickness and death. His critique of distraction resonates with incredible force in our attention economy. We are immersed in a global experiment where algorithms designed to exploit our psychological weaknesses keep us in a state of perpetual divertisement. Pascal would argue that we are losing our capacity to be human because we are losing our capacity to be alone with our thoughts. From the point of view of modern psychology, Pascal's ideas about the inner void bear a striking relationship to what we now call existential angst, or the existential vacuum described by psychiatrists like Viktor Frankl. The idea that the human being has an infinite hole in their heart that they try to fill with finite things is a perfect metaphor for understanding addiction, rampant consumerism, and the obsessive search for external validation. Pascal offers us a diagnosis that contemporary science is only beginning to map in terms of dopamine and reward circuits. He understood that human desire has no end because the object of its desire is not of this world. In the field of technology, Pascal is a direct ancestor of today's programmers. His invention of the Pascaline was the first step toward the automation of logical thought. However, he himself warned that a machine can perform operations of thought, but it has no will or feeling. This distinction is fundamental in current debates about consciousness in artificial intelligence. Can a machine have a heart in the Pascalian sense? Can a machine intuit first principles or feel the terror of the eternal silence of infinite spaces? Pascal would probably say no, because for him, the greatness of man lies precisely in his capacity to suffer and to be conscious of his own limitation, something that a machine, no matter how sophisticated, cannot experience. But to understand this fully, we must look at the literary and narrative legacy of the work. The Pensées have influenced writers of the caliber of Nietzsche, Dostoevsky, Kierkegaard, and Cioran. Pascal was the first existentialist long before the term was even invented. His style, direct, aphoristic, and charged with an almost unbearable emotional intensity, broke with the tradition of heavy philosophical systems. He did not want to build an edifice of ideas. He wanted to launch arrows at the reader's heart. Every fragment is a provocation, a mirror where we are forced to recognize our own ugliness and our own beauty. The fragmentary structure of the work, far from being a weakness, is its greatest strength. It reflects the broken and disordered nature of human thought. Reading Pascal is like walking through a battlefield after the conflict, picking up scraps of wisdom among the ruins of certainty. In analyzing the symbology of his work, we cannot ignore the image of the abyss. It is said that Pascal, after a carriage accident where he nearly fell into the River Seine, always felt an abyss opening at his left side. Whether real or metaphorical, this abyss is a constant presence in his writings. The eternal silence of these infinite spaces terrifies me, he writes in one of his most vulnerable moments. Pascal felt the vertigo of a universe that had become too large and too silent. This is the same anguish the modern human feels when contemplating the vastness of the cosmos revealed by space telescopes, feeling like an insignificant speck of dust. Pascal's response was not despair but humility. He believed that the knowledge of our smallness is the first step toward true wisdom. Reaching the core of his philosophical legacy, we must reflect on his concept of the wager in a secularized world. Although many today may not see God as the answer, the structure of Pascal's wager remains valid in our vital decisions. We all bet our lives on something. Some bet it on professional success, others on family, others on pleasure or a political ideology. Each of these bets carries the risk of losing everything if the object of our faith turns out to be insufficient to fill the void in the heart. Pascal challenges us to be aware of what we are handing our existence over to. He asks us not to be indifferent in the most important matter of our lives, the meaning of our own presence in the world. It is fascinating how Pascal connects the most rigorous science with the deepest spirituality. For him, there is no contradiction between being an expert in hydrostatics and being a mystic. Both disciplines are ways of exploring reality. Science explores the reality of matter and space, while religion and philosophy explore the reality of the spirit and meaning. Pascal criticizes those who want to use reason for everything, but also those who ignore it completely. He advocates for a balance where we recognize that reason is the supreme judge in the realm of facts, but it is blind in the realm of values and ultimate truths. This stance is a lesson in intellectual humility that we would do well to remember in an era of polarization and dogmatism of all kinds. As we enter the final stretch of this reconstruction, it is necessary to address the emotive dimension of Pascal. Despite his reputation as an austere and sometimes somber man, there is deep compassion in his words. He writes for his friends, for the skeptics he respects, for those who are seeking the truth with groans, as he says. Pascal knows that the search for meaning is painful. He himself suffered from constant physical pain for most of his adult life, which adds a layer of authenticity to his reflections on suffering. When he speaks of human wretchedness, he is not speaking from an ivory tower, but from the bed of a sick man who knows his time is running out. This vital urgency is what gives the Pensées its unique vibration. In conclusion, the work of Blaise Pascal is not a book of the past, it is a mirror of the present and a warning for the future. It reminds us that beneath our technological advances and social structures, we remain beings hungry for the infinite, trapped in finite bodies. His analysis of distraction as the great sickness of humanity is more accurate today than it was 4 centuries ago. He challenges us to stop running, to turn off the noise, and to have the courage to face the silence of our own room. In doing so, we might discover, as he did, that at the bottom of our misery lies our true greatness. The reed may be fragile, but as long as it continues to think and feel the weight of its own existence, it possesses a dignity that the entire universe cannot match. Pascal leaves us on that threshold between doubt and faith, between nothingness and everything, inviting us to make our own wager. His voice, emerging from those scraps of paper rescued from oblivion, continues to whisper to us that the greatest adventure is not in the stars, but in the unfathomable territory of the human heart. And so, with the clarity of one who has seen the fire and felt the abyss, we withdraw from these pages, not with all the answers, but with the right questions engraved upon the soul. Thank you very much for joining me on this deep journey through the thought of one of the most extraordinary men who have ever walked the earth.